Liftoff.
Generally speaking, reporters and astronauts have little in common. Let's face it, journalism isn't rocket science.
Go with throttle up.
But Murphy's Law applies equally to both, especially in this, our next joint mission with NASA. To find a story where astronaut Jeff Williams just pointed. Houston, we have a problem. Several problems, actually. For starters, exactly where Jeff pointed was nowhere. The closest town, 3 hours down this dirt road to Docker River. It's an Aboriginal community of just 300, which brings us to our second problem.
Normally, this is the point where I pick a name out of the phone book. But Docker River has no phone book, and the Aboriginal people are notoriously shy. So instead, we went around and got the names of all the people who would be willing to talk to us. Nope, we went back inside.
There were 3.
I'm now going to put those names in a bucket and draw our winner. Trevor Adamson.
Unfortunately, Trevor changed his mind.
Lee Cooper.
So did Lee. Thank God for this man.
Bevyn Young.
Bevyn Young lives in the camel-colored house behind the camel-colored camel.
Hello.
Despite breaking his foot recently, Bevyn was more than willing to walk me through his story. 46 years old and an artist by trade, he first apologized for his reluctant neighbors, who he says are always suspicious of non-Aboriginals.
But you didn't seem to care that I was white.
No, I wouldn't care if you was Shrek sitting down talking to me. I'll talk to anyone, you know.
That said, even Bevyn didn't want to be seen talking to me. So he brought us out here to the bush before launching into this unbelievable story.
It's a bit sad.
What's really sad?
Bevyn told me he is part of Australia's Stolen Generations. Starting in the early 1900s and continuing into the 1970s, it was actually Australian government policy to take Aboriginal children away from their parents and place them in institutions or foster homes. Under the guise of helping the children become civilized, the government kidnapped about 100,000 kids total.
You'd never know your mum and dad.
How young were you?
3 months old.
3 months old?
A baby, 3 months old.
Bevyn says he was sent to live with a white woman in Sydney, where he stayed until, at the age of 18, he decided to return to his Aboriginal roots.
It's a magnet that brings us back. That's it.
His was quite a story, until I found out it was just that, a story.
It's a fantasy that he's got.
We visited the woman Bevyn said raised him.
And I love him dearly, but I didn't bring him up.
Lorraine Van Dyke says she didn't even meet Bevyn until he was 30. They're basically just friends. In fact, she says the only grain of truth to the story he told me, and tells everybody, is that he was forced to leave his village. But it was at the age of 10, and it was his own family that sent him away. Apparently, Bevyn was addicted to sniffing gasoline. It's a big problem here, and he needed treatment. Lorraine thinks he has rewritten history as a coping mechanism.
Because he was sent away when he was 10, I think he's just craved someone to love him.
In all the years I've done this, I've never had someone just fabricate their story. Yet my trip to Docker River was far from wasted. Although I'd heard of the Stolen Generations, I had no idea the extent of the scarring and resentment that still festers 40 years later. Of course, the irony is that I didn't learn that from the one man who agreed to talk to me, but rather from those 299 who flat out refused.
During the time of the kidnappings, it's estimated that up to 1 in 3 Aboriginal children were taken from their parents. Bevyn just wasn't one of them. Fortunately, we had a lot better luck in China, and that's next week.
Which is good to hear. So this was a it turned out to be a really interesting story,
I know,
though, Steve.
Yeah, it just wasn't his story.
Yeah, but and it was made tougher by the fact that you had a close encounter with a dromedary.
Yes, I did.
A one-humped camel.
I was minding my own business. This started eating on our side view mirror, and then this camel started attacking me for no real reason.
Did that hurt, or was
No,
it
it did not hurt. It was just, I was gumming me or something, but anyway.
Well, it made for some fun video that we've gotten a lot of views out of. But Steve, thanks very much.